Westbrook has 18 points, 7 assists, 5 steals in this one. James Harden giving his new teammates some high fives there. Now take a look at the Clippers' next 5 games here. As of this morning, James Harden, the trade is officially official. What's not set in stone, right, is when he's going to debut for his hometown team. After tonight's game against the Lakers, the Clippers ahead on a 3-game road trip. So perhaps we could see him there. Senior insider Adrian Wojnarowski, who broke the trade, he joins us on set now. All day long, you are stuck with us for NBA Today and for NBA Countdown. But let's dive into this a little bit. This is another huge move that the Clippers have made, acquiring even more talent in James Harden. How much pressure is on this organization to make this quartet work?
I think the pressure is in what the Clippers gave up. Their own pick in 2028, which is unprotected. And then that pick swap in 27 that they made the deal with Oklahoma City on to send a first to Philadelphia. And I think people sometimes forget how valuable pick swaps are. A pick swap is what allowed the Celtics to get Jaylen Brown. Pick swap is what allowed the Celtics to trade to get Kyrie Irving, a pick that ended up being Colin Sexton in Cleveland. And they gave up a lot. And this is a team that is just starting to come out from under the Paul George trade with Oklahoma City and all the assets they gave up there. What that means is they cannot let James Harden just be a rental, a player that just plays for the rest of this season and then leaves because this group isn't kept together. And I think that certainly gives some leverage in extension talks with Kawhi Leonard, with Paul George. Both of those players can decline their options. They can become free agents. They could walk into salary cap space somewhere else. And I think especially in this era now of the new collective bargaining agreement, the new second apron, teams are not just looking to just blindly hand out max contracts to players in their 30s, players who have injury histories, because you can't just pay luxury tax your way out of roster problems. There's real consequences. So I think for the Clippers, there is even more pressure now to keep this group together and win this year, but then keep going forward with it in the future. James Harden's 34 years old.
Right, and an unrestricted free agent potentially after this season. And Kendrick Perkins, Ty Lue is going to be sort of the chess master here that's going to have to figure out how to make all of the pieces work. Do you have a solution for this?
Hell yeah, I do. And I'll call T. Lue and tell him my damn self, but I'm going to tell y'all on national TV. Ty Lue, if I'm you, I bring James Harden in off the bench, as a six-man guy. Here's the thing. The second most important person on that team is Paul George, okay? We know Kawhi Leonard, he's their go-to guy. He's a Finals MVP, former Defensive Player of the Year champion. We know what he brings to the table. The Clippers cannot go where they need to go without Paul George. Why do I bring up Paul George? He's averaging 27 points right now, shooting about 53% from the field. And it's because of Russell Westbrook. It's something about that duo. If you go back and look at when he was in Oklahoma City, when Paul George was having that MVP season, he was averaging 28 points a game. Why? Because of the swag of Russell Westbrook. You cannot take Russell Westbrook off the ball, and if I'm Ty Lue, I'm not bringing Russell Westbrook off the bench. So that means that James Harden has to be the one to sacrifice. Again, it's not about who starts. It's about who finishes.
No, I can see where you're coming from that because they're the way they're playing, the way Paul George is playing. And if Paul George plays at a high level, look, you have 3 first-ballot Hall of Famers, and Paul George is probably the 4th. If you're talking about James Harden, you're talking about Russell Westbrook, and you're talking about Kawhi Leonard, their resumes are complete. When you're talking about championships, MVPs, all the things, Paul George is probably that guy that you want to elevate. And so far, what you're saying is that Russell Westbrook elevates him to the highest of levels. Now, the only issue with that is James Harden, in my opinion, helps elevate their team a smidge more because of the shooting, because of the spacing. He doesn't have the same energy as Russ, but when I mentioned Paul George being the 4, that's because if you start James Harden, you start Russell, you start Kawhi, you start Paul George, and then you start Zubac. You got 5. That's your 5 right there. Now, you can take certain guys out that allow other guys to be more ball dominant. So you can take James Harden out first, bring in some defense, and now Russell and Paul George can dominate in that second half or dominate that second unit.
Do you know how many times James Harden's come off the bench in the last 10 years?
Chris Paul. What Chris Paul doing?
I actually went to the finals with James Harden coming in off the bench.
I mean, he's been a 6th man of the year, but that was a very long time ago. He's come off the bench one time after injury.
But Perk, a dynamic where Russ Russ and Paul George are playing well will still not be good enough to potentially beat the Nuggets or beat a Western Conference contender. And the reality is that you need someone that can be plugged in and play and elevate the entire roster, which is what Richard was saying. You want to be able to get input from Terrence Mann, from Bones Highland, from Norm Powell. You want to make sure that those guys are playing their best basketball alongside Paul George and alongside Kawhi Leonard. That's why the last 3 years we've been hearing, we need a point guard. And they got one in Russ. But the reality is they're going to have to split time. And that's going to be the biggest question, because on paper the fit should work, but will the chemistry? And that will require someone to make sacrifice. You always say sacrifice. Is it James Harden? Maybe. But the reality is if he's playing the best basketball for the team, why should it be him? It should be the person that is necessary.
Hey, listen, from the day Russell Westbrook arrived with the Clippers, he has taken on a leadership role.
Yes.
And they hope that would be the case. I think it has exceeded all their expectations. There was not a natural locker room leader on that team. Usually it's your best player. But Russ took that role on. Guys were glad to allow him to do it. And I think if Westbrook is coming off the bench, he'll make that work for this team. He has shown since the day he got there that he wants to impact winning. He's done that. And I think I think in all likelihood, he is going to be the player coming off the bench in this situation. But he has shown in his time there he can handle it.
Well, he's also shown that he's made that sacrifice before. And as long as they continue to win, that's what Russell Westbrook cares about at the end of the day, being able to be on a winning squad.